She was 18 and kicked out with nowhere to go. No suitcase, no savings, just a torn backpack and a silence that followed her everywhere. The door had shut behind her like it meant it. Not, come back later, not, we'll talk. Just, done. For 2 nights, she slept behind a grocery store, curled between crates that smelled like spoiled fruit. The cold ground pressed into her bones, and the quiet felt heavier than hunger. On the 3rd day, she found the listing. A $10 abandoned windmill. No photos, no details, just a location pinned far outside town. Most people would scroll past. Something like that. But when you have nothing, even something broken feels like a chance. She borrowed a stranger's phone, made the call, and by sunset, it was hers. A windmill, rusting, forgotten, alone in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't a home, not really, but it was hers, and for now that was enough. What she didn't know was that something had been waiting inside that windmill for a very long time. Something hidden, something quiet, something beneath the old, wooden ladder. Before anything else, if stories about survival and finding meaning in unexpected places stay with you, this is one of them. Lila hadn't always felt this invisible. There was a time when she belonged somewhere. When she was younger, the one place she felt safe was her grandfather's workshop. It stood behind a small house at the edge of a dry field, worn down by time, but alive in a way the rest of the world wasn't. The smell always came first. Warm oil, sawdust, and old metal. Her grandfather, whom she called Baba, worked slowly and carefully, never rushing anything. He believed everything had a place. He used to tap his tools one by one and say it like it was a rule the world forgot. Lila would sit nearby on a wooden stool, swinging her legs, watching him fix things most people would have thrown away. Broken clocks, rusted hinges, bent tools. He never saw them as useless. He said old things carried stories, and if you were patient enough, they would tell you. She didn't understand that back then, but she remembered the way his hands moved. Steady, certain, even when everything else in life felt uncertain. After her grandmother passed away, the house grew quieter. Baba stopped humming while he worked. The radio stayed off, but he still let Lila sit beside him, sometimes in complete silence, with only the soft sounds of metal and wood filling the room. Those were the last moments that felt safe. When Lila turned 14, Baba got sick. Slowly at first, then all at once. The workshop door stayed closed. Dust gathered where life used to be, and the house felt empty long before he was gone. After that, everything shifted. Her mother worked longer hours, her stepfather moved in, and the warmth that once held the house together disappeared. Arguments replaced silence. Sharp words replaced soft ones. Lila learned to shrink herself, to stay quiet, to avoid being noticed. Because unnoticed things don't get hurt. But that kind of living doesn't last forever. By the time she turned 18, the tension had nowhere left to go. It wasn't one big explosion, just 100 small cracks building over time. Until one night, it ended with a simple sentence. You need to leave. No yelling, no second chances. Just a door closing behind her. The road to the windmill was longer than she expected. Dust rose with every step she took, sticking to her shoes and her skin. There were no cars, no houses, just open land and a sky that felt too wide. She walked. For hours, her legs aching, her thoughts heavy. By the time the sun began to sink, painting everything in tired shades of orange, she saw it in the distance. At first, it looked like nothing more than a shadow, but as she got closer, it slowly took shape. Tall, crooked and still. The windmill. Its blades hung at strange angles, unmoving, like they had given up years ago. The wood was dark and weathered, marked by time. It didn't look welcoming, but it didn't push her away either. It just stood there, waiting. Lila stopped a few steps away, taking it in. This was it, her $10 home. She swallowed the lump in her throat and stepped forward. The door creaked open with a sound that echoed longer than it should have. Inside, the air felt old, not rotten, just forgotten. Dust floated in thin lines where light slipped through cracks in the walls. The floor groaned under her feet, every step uncertain. In the center of the room stood a wooden ladder leading up into darkness. She stared at it for a moment. Something about it felt off, too centered, too intentional. She looked around, there wasn't much else. A broken chair, a rusted hook on the wall, faint marks on the floor like something had once been moved. She knelt near the ladder and ran her fingers along the wood. It was smoother than everything else, less worn, like it had been touched more recently. That didn't make sense. No one had been here in years. Or at least, it didn't look like it. She shook the thought away. Night was coming, and she needed rest. But as she lay on the cold floor staring up at the ladder, something kept her awake. A faint sound, not clear, not loud, just there, like wood shifting, or settling, or remembering. It took her 3 days before she finally climbed it. 3 days of cleaning, of sweeping away layers of dust, of trying to make a small corner feel like her own. And 3 days of hearing that same quiet, almost sound. On the 4th morning, she stood in front of the ladder again, her hands slightly trembling. She told herself she just needed to look. Nothing more. She climbed slowly, each step creaking beneath her. At the top, there was nothing, just a small, empty platform. She let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Maybe it really was nothing. But as she turned to climb back down, her foot hit something that sounded different. Hollow. She froze. Tapped again. The sound was unmistakable. Not solid like the rest. Her heart began to race. She knelt down and pressed her hand. Against the wood, there was a slight gap, barely visible. Carefully, she slid her fingers into it and pulled. The panel shifted just enough for her to lift it. Dust fell as the wood moved, revealing darkness beneath. She hesitated before reaching inside. Her hand brushed against something cold, metal. She pulled it out slowly, a small, heavy box, old and locked. Her breath caught as she stared at it. It didn't belong to the rest of the windmill. It felt intentional. She opened it carefully. Inside were stacks of money, old bills wrapped tightly. Her hands trembled as she touched them. It didn't feel real. She dug deeper, almost afraid it would disappear. Beneath the money was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. She unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was shaky but clear. It said, "I knew someone would find this someday. If it's you, then you needed it. Just like I once did." Her chest tightened as she read on. "You don't find things like this by accident. You find them because you kept going when it was easier to stop." Tears slipped down her face before she realized it. But then her fingers paused. At the very bottom of the box, wrapped in cloth, was something else. She slowly unwrapped it. A rusted key. Heavy, worn smooth on one side. She stared at it, her thoughts racing. A key meant something else, something more. Weeks passed before she understood why. She didn't rush to spend the money. Instead, she stayed. She fixed the windmill piece by piece, remembering the way Baba used to work, slowly, carefully, with purpose. She found tools, made mistakes, learned as she went. One afternoon, while repairing part of the outer wall, her hammer slipped, and the wood gave a hollow sound. She froze instantly, that same sound again. Her heart began to race just like before. She pressed against the wall, and a small panel shifted. Hidden inside was a narrow compartment. Her hands shook as she reached for the key. It fit perfectly. Inside was another box, smaller this time. When she opened it, she didn't find money. She found tools. Old, well-preserved, carefully wrapped tools. Something about them felt familiar. The shape, the balance, the way they were cared for. They reminded her of Baba. Not his exact tools, but the same kind of life. The same patience. The same belief that things could be fixed. That's when it clicked. The windmill wasn't just something she had bought. It was something she had been led to, not by chance but by the fact that she kept going when it would have been easier to stop. Over time, the windmill changed. And so did she. It stood stronger, cleaner, warmer. And Lila, the girl who once had nowhere to go, now had something solid beneath her feet, not just a place but a purpose. One evening she sat outside watching the sky stretch wide above her. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt open. She looked back at the windmill and smiled, a quiet kind of smile that didn't need anyone else to understand it. She had started with nothing, and somehow she ended up exactly where she needed to be. Because sometimes you don't find hidden things by luck. You find them because you refuse to give up when everything told you to.